Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about my personal top 10 Stephen King books. Now, originally when I started making this list, it was going to be top 10 of all Stephen King novels, short stories, nonfiction, etc. But then I realized that I had 30 favorite Stephen King books because I've done a count and I have read exactly 50 Stephen King books at this point. I haven't read every single Stephen King book, so there will be a couple misses in here. For instance, I'm looking forward to reading Duma Key here early in next year, 2026. I started reading Stephen King books when I was 10 or 12 years old. Before that, my introduction to Stephen King was through the movies. Um, Two movies in particular. My mother loved them and would play them over and over again throughout my childhood. So it used to just be like me and my mom hanging out a lot. Um, both of those books have actually made this list, so we'll talk about that when we get to them. Started reading Stephen King at a very young age, which I mean, well, some people your mileage may vary with that, I'm sure, but he was my very first favorite author. And in a lot of ways, Stephen King kind of he started all of this. So I've got a very fond spot in my heart. Very fond spot in my heart, just like many people on here do for Stephen King. My first start into Stephen King books was about 2005 or so. I was in the car with my mom and my mom's friends in Grass Valley, of all places, and we stopped at a garage sale and they had a box of Stephen King books. A lot of these old Stephen King books are the ones that were in that box. There was about 20 or 25 or so old Stephen King hardcovers in there. And I pestered my mom and her friend to get me them, and they bought them for me. The little kid walking out to the car with a big old box of Stephen King books. So that kind of catapulted all of this. The very first Stephen King book that I read wasn't even one of those. It was The Gunslinger, the very first book in the Dark Tower series. So with that being said, I have my top 10 here. I do have one honorable mention, and it's not a novel. We need to talk for a second about On Writing, a memoir of the craft. This is part writing book, this is part memoir. The first half of it, the better part of the first half of it, is just his history, his upbringing, how he got into writing, the history up through his publication, and a lot of the family stuff. It's just so much talk about Tabitha and the kids. There's talk about his mother and everything that went on with that. Everybody asked the question of, "Oh, what happened to Stephen King?" If that's the question that you want to answer, you're gonna have to read On Writing. Through all of these books on the shelf that I can read, that I can pick up at any point and I can read, that will induce some kind of emotion of fear or take me somewhere else, this is something that I find myself often picking up because it's basically just like sitting down and having a conversation with the man himself. It's like you're having a cup of coffee with him. It's honestly hilarious. It's so hilarious. It's a book on writing, but half of the time he's sitting there, he's like, books on writing are fucking trash, dude. They suck. You sit and you write and you do it. That's how I do it. So, I mean, it's so good. It's just one of my favorite things in the world, and I'm very happy to have one of the first edition hardcovers here. This is one of my favorite things ever. So, on a list of my top 10 Stevie K, it had to be on here, even though it's not a novel. Number 10 is Under the Dome. You may recognize it for the TV show. You may recognize it for the... Look at how fat this book is, dude. As you can imagine, a giant dome, invisible, comes down over this city, over this little town, and it blocks off this little town from the rest of the world, including all of the oxygen. Um, so that's something they have to contend with. This is a perfect example of like corruption um, within local governments and what happens when you let people kind of Lord of the Flies style do exactly what they want to do. Um, my personal pick for the very best real human antagonist bad guy, the evil villain of real life. Yeah, this is the best example in all of Stephen King. One thing I will have to say though about this, I've only read it once and the ending is a bit weak. I found it a bit weak. He kind of kinged the ending a little bit. He kind of seemed to paint himself into a corner a little bit. But there are some things in the climax that are fucking wild. And it's, oh, man, it's awesome. Number 9 here, this is one of the books that was my mom's favorite movies, and this was one of my very first introductions to Stephen King. Misery. I think everybody who knows Stephen King knows Misery at this point. This is the story of an author who gets into a car crash and is taken under the wing of a one Annie Wilkes. His number one fan finds him and has to nurse him back to health. It doesn't quite work out the way that you would think it would. Now, as I said, with Under the Dome, this is another pristine, perfect example of the perfect antagonist, the perfect bad guy. This one, I don't know if we're going to go as far as to say sympathetic antagonist, but she's something. Like it's damn near a perfect book, and it's short. It's extremely readable. It is gruesome. Misery is essentially a giant metaphor for alcoholism and addiction at large. Specifically, alcohol and cocaine is what Stephen King was dealing with at the time. In this book, there's constantly, like, you can't look over, like, you're constantly looking over your shoulder because something is going to be there, and you're constantly walking on eggshells, feeling like even if your footing is good for 1 second, it might not stay that way forever, and it could change in the blink of an eye. It's so perfect. As someone who is in recovery myself, I get it and I love it. It's extraordinarily applicable and it's awesome. Coming in at number 8, my pick is Needful Things, another big chunker. The Last Castle Rock Story. Or is it? I read this for the first time on a drive out to San Jose to see my family. And Leland Gaunt, it's 3 for 3 so far. These are like the greatest bad guys of all time. I absolutely love this. The way that this town, this small town of Castle Rock, is depicted and the way it's flushed out. Every little house has a person who lives in it, and you get to learn their backstory. And everyone is so interesting. There'll be, oh, there's a little flower shop back there. You never go to it. But I want a whole nother book about like that little flower shop or something like that. I read Salem's Lot a month or two after I read Needful Things. Salem's Lot came out a good number of years before Needful Things did, and I could tell that a lot of the set and setting that Stephen King was going for in Salem's Lot, he was able to really hash out and really kind of perfect in Needful Things. Every single one of these top 10 books feels like they need to be a top 5 book, but that can't possibly work. Coming in at number 7, we have Revival. I love how crazy colorful this cover is. Just look at that. I was in the throes of my addiction to alcohol when I read this, and the metaphors to alcohol are so strong in this, but unlike Misery, to where everything is just, there's like no let up in anything. There's so much redemption and so much recovery in Revival that, like, I even try to shoehorn passages of this book into like my Zoom recovery meetings, so I get them to like, I try to put Stephen King everywhere and get everyone to check it out. The final part of Revival is something absolutely batshit crazy. Um, yeah, it's like Skeleton Crew essentially. Another thing that goes with this, there's a huge aspect of losing faith and everything that has a big resonance with me personally. With my upbringing, I was a very faithful Christian child, and then I deconstructed throughout my high school years. Um, and I noticed so many parallels, and perhaps a lot of other people do, and that's why it's so beloved. But yeah, dude, that back part is fucking wild, dude. All right, we are on to number 6 now. God, this feels like it should be so much higher. Pet Cemetery. I have here an old book club edition. It's one of the originals, but it's a book club, so it's not terribly valuable. Pet Cemetery is a book that is sold as a horror story, and yes, it does have horror elements to it, but what this really is a meditation on mourning and grief. This is a work of essentially unrelenting bleakness that we don't really see from Stephen King. This is not a scary book. This is not a scary book. This is a sad book, is what this is. Um, it's a very real book. It is a book that gets a lot of different emotions out of the same people who read it at different points in their lives. I have only ever read this book as a person who is not a parent. For many people who read this book before they become a parent, they feel very differently about this book after they become a parent. I haven't read this book in the last 5 years, but I still think about it at least like every week, if not more. And it's just crazy. Just every book on this list, the sticking power in my brain is these things will never leave you. These things will never leave me, at least. I've been watching these top 10 Stephen King, whatever Stephen King related YouTube videos and podcasts for 10, 15 years now, and I never really see people put this one on their list. At my number 5 from 2013, I put Joyland. Joyland, this is the book that I read whenever I start to feel depressed. This is the book that will bring sunshine to my day anytime. This is the exact opposite of Pet Cemetery in the fact that this is medicine to brighten your day. Every single time I go anywhere, like to the beach, which I don't really go to the beach, but if I was gonna go to the beach, this is the book that I will bring every time. I've read it at least 5 times, and I hope that I can read it at least like another 30 times. It's a ghost story. But is it? It's a ghost story, or is it really? This is a book about carnivals and carnival people and crazy shit and the ghost rides and the halls of mirrors and there's a ghost, or is there a ghost? The crazy history and just going and hanging out with carnival people and seeing it. There's coming of age in here. There's some love in here. There's everything Stephen King, just like Stephen King, just there to brighten your day and to lighten your mood. Of the 3 hard case crime books, this is by far the best. All right, everybody, put your happiness away. We're here at number 4. We got The Shining. Haunted houses, anybody? Haunted hotels, anybody? This is the best haunted house hotel book outside of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. If I could put Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House on my top 10 Stephen King books, I will, and I would. And if I had thought about that until right now, I damn well may have just done that to be funny. Stephen King himself, there's like 6 notices of it. He's like, this is why I love Haunting of Hill House in this book. Which is, I love how aware it is, and I love how thankful he is to it. This is another huge allegory metaphor for addiction and with the corruption arc. Jack is, in my opinion, the best example of Stephen King executing corruption of like a human soul. There's really no bad guys in this because the bad guy is the house, and everyone who steps within it is a victim, and it is so well done. This is The Shining is the other book on this list that I was introduced to by my mother as a young child. Between this and Misery, I'd probably seen each of these movies, and it was the Kubrick version of The Shining. I'd probably seen each of these 30 times before I even read my very first Stephen King book in like late elementary. Which is crazy. My mom loved these. My mom absolutely loved these, and there's a lot of nostalgia in it for sure. The set and the setting, everything is done so well. The parts of the book that are not in the Kubrick film are actually my favorite parts of the entire book. I won't spoil those for you here. You can just never really go wrong with The Shining. There's never a bad time to read this. Time for my number 3 chunker. It's The Stand. Surprise, surprise. Everyone's favorite. This is always on the list. So, 1978. This is full scope Stephen King. Full scope meaning United States. But, if you read The Road by Cormac McCarthy and you haven't read this yet, if you want like 100 more characters and about 1,000 more pages, I would definitely say go ahead and read this. Hands down, this is the very best example of Stephen King essentially making a cast that rivals like the cast of The Wheel of Time and Malazan, with just crazy amounts of characters and points of view and people, and every single individual in it is an individual. It's so long. It is long. It's fucking nuts how long it is. But with the way that it is, it's so long, but it's so readable and it's so unput-downable, I'm gonna say, that the suspension of disbelief that you don't even realize that you have allowed to come over yourself as you have like long reading sessions in this book is absolutely transportative. Whatever. It's seamless. It is seamless. There are hilarious moments in this book. There are ridiculous, crazy, scary moments in this. There is what I consider to be the scariest horror scene in all of Stephen King within this book. And it's a little bit rock and roll, which is kind of always good for me. Number 2. Would you believe it? It's It. See, the top 5 isn't terribly surprising on this. This is the best coming-of-age story. I mean, that's just what it comes down to it for me. The Losers Club is the greatest group of friends. While this book is extraordinarily, like, momentarily horrifying at times, what it's really about is friendship and love and companionship and the strength of being held up by your friends and the power that you guys can all give each other when you come together to tackle things and to beat things. And it's so much about
the quiet moments to where anything but horror is going on whatsoever. It's also about hatred and greed and racism and deep-seated politics and tradition and so many other things. While I think this one has gotten so much press and coverage and talk and popularity over the past 10 years since two, uh, those It Part 1 and 2 movies started coming out, the book definitely holds its spot on a list like this. Um, it does have that one scene. It's poorly written. I won't stand up for it. It's badly written, and it didn't need to be there. Sometimes I just want to go back. Sometimes I just want to go back. The joy with these last couple books on here, with like The Stand and It, and even like Under the Dome, they're so long that you can go back and live in them for a while. All right, so there's only one book left on the list. Can you guess what it is? Let's see. My favorite Stephen King book of all time, and my favorite book of all time, actually, which held its place. I read it twice. I read it 10 years ago, 12 years ago, a long time ago, and then I read it 2 months ago, and I loved it even more. That is Wizard and Glass by Stephen King. Book 4 of the Dark Tower series. I could talk forever about how much I love this. This is my favorite love story. I'm not too much of a romance person, but every once in a while, Stephen King makes me break that rule, I guess. I definitely think, and it is a bit of a not controversial, but the audience is divided, that this is the high point of the entire Dark Tower series. Now, either you're gonna agree with that or you're gonna hard disagree with that, and that's fine. That's the joy of it. But this book is fantasy. This book is science fiction. This book is horror. This book is western. This book is romance, all wrapped in one thing. This book is able to go and actually do romance in a way that feels genuine to me. Especially in fantasy and other things like that, the romance is never very genuine. It doesn't feel very genuine, and it doesn't feel real, and I can't relate to it. This feels extraordinarily real. It feels genuine. This is tragedy. This is without the bleakness, but it's with the tragedy, and it is tragedy on a Shakespeare level. And everything about it is so well executed. I don't even like westerns. I don't even like romance. I love all the other stuff. There's some nasty characters in here that are the greatest characters, the greatest bad guys. This book takes everything that is the best from his novels and his genre fiction, and it is written a vast majority of the time with utter elegance, and it has so much of the beauty that you would see in the literary fiction novellas of different seasons, with like Shawshank and everything else, and The Body and all of that. This is definitely my very favorite Stephen King book, and I will read a passage here and I will let you guys go. Now the two of them rode silently towards town, both lost in their own thoughts. Their way took them past the Delgado house. Roland looked up and saw Susan sitting in her window, a bright vision in the gray light of that fall morning. His heart leaped up, and although he didn't know it then, it was how he would remember her most clearly forever after. Lovely Susan, the girl at the window. So do we pass the ghosts that haunt us later in our lives. They sit undramatically by the roadside like poor beggars, and we see them only from the corners of our eyes, if we see them at all. The idea that they have been waiting there for us rarely even crosses our minds. Yet they do wait. And when we have passed, they gather up their bundles of memory and fall in behind, treading in our footsteps and catching up little by little. It's 800 pages of beauty. It's the best. It's my favorite book. It's my favorite book, and it is enhanced by the other 7 books around it so much, and it's so inspiring to me and so beautiful, and I think about it constantly. I've thought about it constantly for the better part of 15 years. And every single moment I think about wanting to read it again. And if there was ever one book, if I was left with one book, Wizard and Glass. Cheers.